Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our March the 25th City Council meeting. I now call this meeting to order. I trust that your cell phones have been placed on silent. At this time, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to stand and we'll pledge to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this evening, as I was thinking about those of you that only have a couple of weeks left with us, as you get ready to depart your service to our city, I was reminded of a verse in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14, where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And as I was thinking about many of your services to this city and what you contributed to this council and to our city, I'm truly thankful for everything that y'all have done. And I think that there is safety in this council because we have differences of opinion, but we each bring something different to the table that is unique, that is in its own way your strength. And I've always appreciated that. And it seems like this council has always leaned on each other and appreciated each other. And for that, I'm truly grateful for your service. And as you start the next chapter of your life, I just pray God's blessings on your endeavor. Would you bow with me in prayer? God, we are thankful for those that have served on this council, that have been so faithful. And we just pray, God, that your blessings would be upon them as they enter the next chapter of their life. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, we have no special presentations this afternoon. Could I have approval of the minutes? All right, with no objections, the minutes will stand as they are recorded. Looking at this week's agenda, council, we have a couple of items on a final reading, one item in finance, a couple of items in planning. Any of these items need to be brought to our attention. Seeing no lights, we'll move into ordinances on first reading. Parks and Public Works that we went over last week, I believe, and Councilman Hester's committee. Any questions or comments concerning any of the items on first reading? All right, very well. Looking at next week's proposed agenda. Resolutions for tonight. Did I miss them? Resolution. Okay. Maybe I skipped too far over. There we go. That's on this week's?
Yes, sir.
I don't have mine on. Oh, here we go.
Got it?
I skipped too far over.
Okay.
My fault. All right, moving down into resolutions. I skipped the page. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Related to item C, we spoke about this briefly last week and understand the spirit of the resolution. But Mr. Attorney, I had asked for you to provide us your legal opinion related to some of the concerns that you had expressed. I've not received that yet. I don't know if you've sent an email to the entire council or not, but.
I am sorry, I have not yet at this point, but I will be glad to send that to you before this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right.
That's all,
You
Mr.
good?
Chair. Yes.
right.
Well, actually, I do have one other
Okay.
resolutions.
Madam Vice Chair.
Item G under planning, it's a resolution. Joseph DeGaetano, Heather DeGaetano, it's a special exceptions permit. Is the applicant here for that? Okay, great. And Bill Reed, thank you all very much for being here. So we have been working on conditions for this special exceptions permit. And while we're together in agenda session, I'd just like to get for the record that you all are aware of the conditions related to the special exceptions permit for a boutique wine and cheese shop. The three conditions are that you shall maintain, and these are all required all at the same time, you shall maintain a Tennessee agriculture license, shall have an annual minimum of 10% of retail sales be non-alcohol such as food, and retail display space shall not exceed 900 square feet. Can I get an audible affirmation that you understand those conditions and will abide by them? Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll be able to move quickly on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving into next week's proposed agenda. All of our items on first read this week will be final read next week. Moving down to ordinances on first read, we do have a couple of items coming out of the mayor's office. The off-premise advertising and on-premise advertising, as well as the tree ordinance. I think Mr. Anderson is going to come and briefly give us an update or a little synopsis of those two ordinances, correct?
Yes, sir, but Darian's going to give the sign presentation. I'm going to give the trees. They're both going to be brief but informative.
Okay, thank you.
Well, starting off with the sign ordinance, in front of you, you have a binder with the new sign ordinance that me and Emily Wood and the LDO zoning and RPA team have worked on. In addition to that, you will see in the front pocket that you have all of the comments we received from stakeholders and what the LDO and RPA responses to those comments for this updated draft. So, thank you. In November, we had come to you guys with this sign ordinance, so just a quick recap of that. And then if you have any questions about these, again, we can dig into it a little bit deeper. But the background, there's been no comprehensive update in over 25 years to the sign ordinance. So it is much needed to be with today's technology and just changing landscape of Chattanooga. There are new federal law requirements since the last update. It's hard to read and enforce as it currently stands today, and needed to address the disbanding of BOSA, the Board of Sign Appeals, as they all go to BOZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals now. And then just generally, there's a lot of missing and vague information. So what didn't change is the form-based code, the Brainerd and Levelfield Gateway overlay map and standards, off-premise sign standards, and this is a big one. We left everything regarding off-premise signs, so billboards, completely separate, and it is as it has always been. This is strictly updates to the on-premise signs, so all of your business signs that you see around. The scenic corridors and areas are the same as of now, and then non-conforming signs is the same as well. So the major changes of this draft that were in there the last time that we spoke were added and updated definitions, more flexibility for businesses such as administrative modifications like the zoning code currently has, master sign plan, signage allowed on right-of-way and building walls with public entrances, murals, tables and graphics, which if you go through, like I said, the updated code is in that binder in front of you. You'll see those tables and graphics, sandwich board signs being an allowable sign, and then sign setback updates. Those are the major ones. All right, and so since we have last spoke, we got those comments from sign industry stakeholders, the mayor's office / city attorney, and community members. And the main changes from the original draft that we had shared with you guys to this draft that you have in front of you now is the complete separation of off-premise into chapter 3A and on-premise into a chapter 3B, so that those are, again, completely separate. An aligned daytime and nighttime brightness for internally illuminated signs to industry standards instead of the brighter standard that we had in the previous draft. We've also changed the electrical wiring standards for detached signs from underground to meeting National Electric Code. This one was a big one as it is cost prohibitive to have it underground for a lot of new businesses, and we certainly didn't want that. And then wall signs kept at 20% of the building wall instead of going to the 1.5 square feet per linear foot. That was just a request from the sign industry. And our enforcement team said that it wouldn't have been, it's not a problem to continue enforcing that. And then last but not least, window and door signs covering a sign area. We had 20% originally. We were asked for 25%, and that doesn't change much for us. So those were the big changes. And again, you have the new draft in front of you in your binder. Do you guys have any additional questions for me?
We got a couple. Councilwoman Dolly.
Yes, hello. Hey, Chris. Hey, Darian.
Hi.
I was out on leave when y'all presented this the first time, so please excuse my, me trying to get caught up.
That's okay.
I'm just have a few requests. If you could email this to us, and then could you send me a red line version? I have another binder upstairs. Was that the original binder that had the, for the signs?
I think that's the one that was given out in the fall.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is, so I can toss that?
Yes.
This is new?
This is the new one.
Okay.
A few changes.
Okay, so just if you could email this and then send a red line version, that'd be fine.
Okay.
That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Darian, great job.
Thank you.
This is
And
something.
Emily. She
And
did.
where is it? Is she, Emily
She's in
here?
Colorado right now, but she did a lot of work on this, and I certainly don't want to count her out.
That's why she's in Colorado.
Yeah.
Chris, I have a feeling you had a little hand on this as well. This is something you and I have had a strong passion for many years. Your first term, I believe, my first term. This is great. As most people know, I'm kind of in this industry, so I appreciate you letting me sit in on some of the early drafts and voice some questions or concerns. And my question for you, though, is regarding BOZA and moving that from BOSA was obviously something we definitely made a great move on because we were having a hard time with that. Will they be, how fast can they be up to speed? I'm kind of going along parallel with the zoning code and LDO. How fast can they be trained?
They have already been doing signs. This is more
Yes.
than anything.
code is
Oh,
what-
you're talking about on the new code?
Yes, ma'am.
So we have in the resolution that we'll bring in front of you guys, a 60-day before it becomes effective.
Mm-hmm.
This will allow us to get in all the processes that we need to and do the training that we need to with BOZA. And so I'm planning on bringing it in front of BOZA for at least 2 training sessions within that time.
And the second part is with an installation of a new sign code,
Yes.
do we have the mechanism to enforce it?
Yes, that is the.
Dr. Burrs would want me to ask that question, so I'm going to ask that question.
I heard her voice when you said it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was the biggest thing going through this code. We actually went through this code with my new team that I'm now the assistant director of, and some of them are here today, Zach and Shelby over there. They went through this line by line with us, and they were the enforcement eyes and ears. So as we're going through it, they're constantly saying, okay, well, how are we going to enforce that? What does that look like? And Bill was sitting in on a lot of those meetings as well. And so as we went through this, that was a major thing to make sure that we could truly enforce this new sign code. And that also is why we have a lot of those new definitions that we talked about the last time we put this in front of you, because with enforcement, it's very difficult when you have vague or no definitions to be able to back you up.
Well, I, for one, am super excited to see a sign code that makes sense, that has visual representation that we can all kind of wrap our heads around. And I applaud you and your team and Emily from wherever she's at in Colorado.
Yes.
This is really, we've, over the last 4 years, I guess, Chris, we've tackled some pretty big projects with the zoning code, now sign code.
Yes.
And I'm super excited to see this come through late in my career here up on this dais. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you.
I'm not seeing any other lights at this time. Chris, you want to lead us into the tree ordinance?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Chairman, thank you. City Forester Pete Stewart and I have been working on this for a little over a year. When I started this, I didn't understand that trees would be one of the most complicated topics I've ever written legislation on. It is more complicated than most of what Councilman Ledford just mentioned that we've worked on, which is why a simple ordinance took over a year. We drew a lot from the Knoxville ordinance, things that had been tested and passed within the last few years. Our tree ordinance has not been updated in several decades by and large. So I'll go through just some of the changes and take questions, and I will send you a red line copy, Councilwoman Dotley, so you don't have to ask for that. So here's a quote from our mayor. "Trees are one of the most valuable assets a city has. By planting and preserving them, we're investing in Chattanooga's long-term sustainability and livability. This is about making sure that as Chattanooga grows, we protect the natural resources that define our city." And that's what this is about. It's not about stopping development. It's not about stopping people from moving here. It's about development and trees coexisting going forward and increasing both. So in the number one, the definitions section, that's pretty standard for any piece of legislation I've brought you. There's new terminology, there's new methods of measurement. So that's just a standard ordinance revision section. Number two, the Tree Commission, which has existed since at least the 90s, makes fee recommendations now and hears appeals. There was some old language about them choosing the city forester. So we have moved that to number three, made it a professional HR process like every other city position of its type. That's been happening in practice anyway, and I believe we've only had 2 city foresters for the last 40-plus years. So the idea of hiring one has not come up that often. We've had Pete for a while, and before that, we had Gene Hyde for many years. This ordinance expands urban forestry planning. The city forester will lead that effort. It will include a tree inventory for the city and a master plan for the city with all of our public land. There's new guidance for public tree protection, instructions for the critical root zone protection, but also it meets current professional standards of care that have changed since the last time the tree ordinance was amended. For the tree ordinance permits, right now, a tree ordinance permit to do work on a public tree, which is in a right-of-way or in a city park or some other city-owned land, requires a $500 permit no matter what. We have scaled that down to reflect what the different types of permits are. If it's a non-construction project, somebody wants to add a driveway to their house and take out a city tree, that's just a $100 permit. It doesn't take as long to research that, and our fee should reflect our time in it. $250 for small projects with a simple land disturbing permit, and $500 will remain for large development with a complex land disturbing permit. Number 7, there is now a bonding procedure for required buffer trees. Right now, if we have you plant trees to buffer your new commercial development from the neighboring residential development, if you take them down in a year and a day, we don't know about it. There's no mechanism for us to know that, and the root system's not established. So we've put in a 3-year bonding period. At the end of 3 years, the survival rate is much, much higher. They've established a mature root system that should make them survive from here on. These buffer trees are usually not on residential property. They typically, most commonly, are found on commercial or industrial property that borders residential property. Sometimes they're in high-density residential bordering low density. This ordinance also establishes for the first time a tree bank for the city of Chattanooga. This is where we will house funds for new tree planting across the city. We have to create this in order to house the recompense funds, which number 9 is probably the biggest change in this tree ordinance. For all development, well, with some exceptions I'll go into, you are required to have 36 caliper inches of trees at the end. You can do this through retaining trees that are already on the site. You can plant new trees, or you can do a combination of those things. You can also pay into the tree bank if planting and retention is not possible. This would not include any form-based code zone because obviously of the limited dense nature of all the form-based code zones, and it would exclude all other special purpose zones like institutional. But this would be for residential, commercial, and industrial development of 1 acre or more. And number 10, notable tree protection and registry. Owner consent is required for this. We've never had a tree registry in the city of Chattanooga, but if you want to nominate a tree that you own because it's the oldest pin oak or whatever variety it is, you can do that. Your neighbor cannot do it against your will. And that is all that we are changing in the tree ordinance, and I'm happy to take questions, send out a red line copy. It's actually going to have, Councilwoman, red and blue in it for two different reasons, and I'll explain it in the email.
Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, you and I have talked about trees that were required in a zoning case that several years later have been removed by the property owner. And we have really not, as a city, have not had a mechanism or I guess strong enforcement on that. We've cited several examples in East Brainerd where it just appears you can just cut down trees and there is no replacement, there's no enforcement mechanism. So I have to look at Bill, I guess, and go, we have this will help solve that problem because we now have a clearer guidelines or guardrails to prevent that.
Yes, sir, the 3-year bonding process and the new penalties the enforcement penalties that are in this new ordinance should protect them. Some people are still going to break the rules, but the rules have stricter penalties now.
Sure.
And the bonding process requiring 3 years is also going to make, obviously, the canopy is going to be larger and they have a higher chance of survival because they have a more established root system at the end of 3 years instead of 1.
Yeah, very true. How are we going to monitor this, do you think?
That part of it specifically?
Monitoring the removal of trees in conjunction with a new tree ordinance.
The forester position takes on a little bit more responsibility for this, and
Okay.
I believe his office is going to expand a little bit in the next year.
Is that something
moving
our
some
code
people.
inspectors might be, as they're out and about, noticing as well? Is that something that has been?
Code inspectors could see violations. I don't know that they're going to go look for them. We would ask the forester and his staff to do that, but they would be empowered to do that, yes.
On mostly commercial properties, I'm assuming?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that would make sense. Great work. Thank you for bringing this to us. I know that we've had questions. I've talked to a few landscape, actually architects who have inquired about this, and it seems to be that it's welcomed in the industry, and it looks like it's been thoroughly researched and brought forth with definite thoughtfulness.
Well, thank you. We have spent a lot of time on it, and we have spoken with a lot of outside groups, including builders, developers, and landscape architects, arborists, people whose job it is to protect and preserve trees. And it was an odd collection of agreement on this.
Well, and oftentimes, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one last point, oftentimes we will place in conditions in zoning, rezoning requests, trees.
That's right.
Only to have them disappear a year later and with no consequences. So it's a lot of effort moving forward on that part, especially when the community is involved, thinking they're going to get a benefit of, and then poof, they're just gone. And that's, I think this is a good step to move forward with enforcing that.
Thank you, sir. The goal is to increase the overall tree canopy and preserve what we have. More trees means better erosion control, better air, better quality of life for Chattanoogans.
Reminds me of the steep slope vegetation component.
Yes, sir, it does.
Thank you. Chairman, thank you.
Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, this just reminded me of a question that we had years ago
Yes, sir.
regarding this. And development, there's development meaning clearing land, and then there's development meaning I want to add an addition to my building.
Right.
All triggers something along the lines of tree and canopy and other requirements like that. Based on the one slide that you had on here that talked about 36 inches, I don't know if that was on there accurately to make sense, 36.
Yes, and
inches of
that's for large development over an acre.
Okay, so just over 1 acre?
Yes.
Okay. So my follow-up question, though, is are there any details in this ordinance that govern where on a property trees must be kept or placed?
No.
Good. That would be really great. Is there anything in this ordinance that allows that to be determined by a city official that can say, nope, sorry, you're going to have to plant the trees right here in order to get your building permit?
On private property, no, absolutely not. I would hope that our forester and his staff would offer suggestions if there's different types of soil on a property and they knew that one type would be better for this type of tree. I would hope they would offer suggestions, but there will be no requirements.
That is fantastic. And I don't know if now is the right time or not, but I got to tell you, it makes me chuckle to listen to my colleague and dear friend of mine talk about tree preservation when he kills them for a living. I just can't. I just can't let the irony pass in this moment.
I also recycle tremendously.
Thank you, Chris.
Printers take it.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you.
iPad.
Chris, thanks for the work that you've done on this ordinance. You and I have talked about the fact that this was in the works off and on for a long time. In 2023, I did a lot of digging on the tree ordinance, had a lot of meetings with stakeholders in District 2. And District 2, we recently, at our February neighborhood network meeting, we focused specifically on trees. It's an important issue for us. We're seeing our canopy age out. We're losing canopy in District 2, not only because of development, but because of the age of our canopy, storms, et cetera, drought has really stressed our canopy. I have a few questions specifically about what you presented today. And also, in addition to the red line, I'd appreciate if you'd send us the presentation.
Sure.
So I have a few questions related to the presentation, and then it's a 22-page ordinance, so it'll take some time to study. I don't know that I'll be ready for a first vote next week. So the permits, the fee reduction, the new procedures and levels for tree ordinance permits. So you went over this quickly, that if someone has if there's a publicly owned tree and they're only cutting one of them, it's $100 fee. Help me understand that better, please.
I'd be happy to, and I apologize if in my haste to respect the council's
Yeah, I
schedule,
know,
I might have gone a little fast. But
Sometimes we want you to go fast, but so that means we just have to rewind a little bit, and that's okay with me.
So right now, all the tree permits, and that is, you have to have a tree permit if you are cutting down one of the city's trees, one of our trees. It's in a right-of-way, it's in a park, it's on some publicly owned land. You have to have a tree ordinance permit. And right now, whether that is clearing 5,000 square feet of trees or one tree between your house and the street, it is $500. So this would establish levels that reflect the actual work of staff time that we have in it and also the scope of the project. So in the situation you're talking about, I think it's similar to the example I've been using. Let's say I've got a house on a city street and I want to add a driveway, but there's a street tree between my house and the road. So I've got to take out that street tree. I can get the $100 permit, which is the quickest and cheapest permit that we'll offer. And again, right now it's $500. And then I have three options. I can plant that tree back right next to where it was. I can plant it somewhere else on my property, or I can pay into or in the verge, or I can pay into a tree bank, the cost of that tree plus 25%, and the city will plant it somewhere in the vicinity. Most people are not going to choose that last option, but it is an option for people who want it.
So that permit cost, that $100 permit cost, takes into account the cost to research the tree and put together the work for a permit for a single tree removal. Does not sound like that permit cost takes into account the value of the tree.
No.
So on the replanting the tree, how are we valuing trees? What page is that on?
$200 per inch diameter at breast height. So a 2-inch tree would be the most common standard tree that you would find, and that's a $400 tree.
Well, but that might be the most common tree you would find to purchase and plant. But if I'm going to cut a single tree, that tree could be 2 inches in diameter, or that tree could be 30 years old.
Yes,
And there's a very different value to our tree canopy from a young 10-year-old tree and a 30-year-old tree.
that's right.
So help me understand how this ordinance can take that into account, because cutting one tree if it's a 80-year-old post oak, is worth a whole lot more than $100 to the city of Chattanooga, even though it's only one tree for a driveway.
Yes, ma'am, I agree. And that permit fee is just about the cost to issue the permit.
Right,
It is
right.
irrespective of the value of the tree. We have different language in the ordinance that guides that. And again, it's $200 per caliper inch, or per diameter, DBH inch, diameter of breast height.
So if I cut a, so let's do some easy math. So if I cut a tree that has a 100 diameter inch, and it's $200 per diameter inch, 200 times 100, what is that, y'all?
Couple $1,000.
$2,000 worth of tree. We have 4 zeros, yeah, so it'd be 20,000, somebody, thank you. $20,000 worth of tree. If I cut down a 100-inch diameter tree, I've cut down equivalent of a $20,000 tree. That feels like very fair math.
It's a big tree.
It is a big tree, and it matters, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm glad you have a driveway now, but that 100-inch diameter tree also was very valuable. So I've cut down a $20,000 tree. I spent $100 to get the permit for that. So now the next thing that happens is, and it was a publicly owned tree, so this is why I have this responsibility now. So when I have 3 options, you said, to plant that tree on my property
Or in the verge.
or in the verge. What is the verge? What do you mean? Is it?
The grass strip between the sidewalk, it's in
Okay.
the right of way.
Okay, so plant that in the verge, or pay into the tree bank.
Yes.
So would I be paying $20,000 into the tree bank, and would I be planting the equivalent of 100-inch diameters worth of trees to replace that 100-inch diameter tree? Or am I planting a 2-inch diameter tree and calling it a day?
You would be replacing the caliper inches. I think this is a very unlikely scenario. If I was putting in a driveway, I wouldn't take out a 100-inch tree. It'd be cheaper to go around it. But in this case, you would be replacing 100 inches, so that's going to be 50 new 2-inch trees if you do it that way.
Okay. What about if I am driving and I hit we'll use 50 this time, so it's not a $20,000 tree, it's a $10,000 tree. And this is real. This like North Market Street in my district to North Dallas, we had very large street trees. And they are slowly being taken out by people who somehow managed to lose control and hit a tree, and enough to damage the tree to have to be cut down. So does that then become a $10,000 fine or the planting of that many trees?
It should. I mean, there's a lot of things that would lead up to that. It wouldn't be automatic. Obviously, there'd be a law enforcement investigation that would precede that if it's a traffic accident that caused property damage like that. And I imagine insurance companies would get involved, but yes.
And we have the means to be able to enforce this.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so then going to our $250 permit and our $500 permit, are these permits also requiring that same diameter of tree to be replaced?
Yes, it's a one-for-one replacement.
One-for-one replacement?
Across the board.
Okay.
And the $250 level is for a simple land disturbing permit construction project, so less than an acre. And the complex land disturbing permit projects would remain at the $500 fee.
So with this ordinance, if I am clearing for a development that's 5 acres and I have, who counts how many trees I have and does the measurement for all the diameter that I'm cutting?
So if you're clearing, are you talking, there's a different answer depending on this. Is it city property or private property?
Private property.
Private property, no one counts them. We just say you have to have 36 inches at the end.
Okay.
And that can be that you kept 36 inches of trees, that you planted 36 inches of trees, or some combination therein.
Okay, and 36 inches, we're talking diameter of?
Diameter
per
of breast
acre.
height. Mhm.
Per acre, okay.
Which a lot of builders if they want to sell their houses for more money, are doing now. Some builders don't plant that much, but this is not an unreasonable amount of trees per acre to plant.
No, I agree, yeah, and I think it's important to have the clarity that this is different from clearing on private property to public land.
Right.
So then, if we as a city decide to build on city property and we cut down some awesome trees, do we pay into the tree bank?
That's an excellent question that I've not posed to our attorney. He's not looking at either of us, but I think he knows I'm going to ask it. That did not come up in the ordinance, so we need to find an answer to that.
Okay, because there are, they're the public's trees and the public would be paying for this, so, we, okay.
I mean, I will say that we have a pretty healthy internal forestry plan. We love planting trees everywhere we can, so it would be unusual if we didn't plant back the 36 inches.
Yeah.
Or more, frankly.
Right. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I have for now. I look forward to the red line. Again, thank you for the work you've done on this. I think that my district will be best served by me sharing this ordinance with them to get feedback, because I do have a goodly number of folks that care a whole lot about this, and I do think that professionals in this space, whether they are arborists or developers or landscapers, they have they have their own professional perspectives on this. The public may bring a different perspective that frankly would be controversial, and I've shared that with my district. My district is really ideologically diverse, and we've got folks that you love the idea of protecting every tree until it's your tree and you want to build a garage, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
we have to be really thoughtful about that. And so our tree ordinance has been so inconsequential, is currently so inconsequential. When other communities look at our tree ordinance, I actually have a document where Tallahassee studied a bunch, and they said there's nothing to learn from Chattanooga
That's right.
about our tree ordinances that week, right? So this is a step, an incremental step toward better protection of our canopy. And I'll be interested to hear from my district about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I may, I'm glad you brought up the Tallahassee study, because you and I and Pete Stewart are maybe the only 3 people in town who have read it.
And Jim Johnson.
And Jim Johnson, certainly, in your district.
Yeah.
If you look in there, Knoxville was the primary location we drew a lot of these things from.
Yes, I noticed that. And looking back at my notes, I had some highlighted items like that tree bank. Oh, one other question. Sorry, Chair. And Ken may have headed toward this. We are requiring this 36 inch of coverage. Might we have the opportunity to put some kind of language in related to hardwood trees, or more specifically, a list of native trees? And we have hundreds of trees that are native to our area. But our canopy will not be well replaced if we plant Japanese maples and crepe myrtles. You know what I mean?
I
They're
do,
beautiful,
absolutely.
but they're short and they're not
ornamental.
going to replace an oak. So
Yes.
what kind of thinking did you do around that?
We've talked about that because we've put lists of trees in ordinances before, and the problem with putting the list in the ordinance is it becomes obsolete about a month later when you find out that one of the species is diseased, and you shouldn't plant it in your city.
Okay.
So what I would recommend is the forester maintaining a list that the forester can change without amending city code to change it, and we can point people to the list in the ordinance.
Okay, I like that idea. And what about a preference for hardwood trees?
I'll have to think on that and get back to you on it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd appreciate that. Okay, that's all, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Attorney?
Yeah, just a few of those questions, at least in what we've got written, at least right now. There is a listing, at least here, of prohibited trees that we include in the
Yes.
definition of the code. And there is apparently a Tennessee Invasive Plant Council's Invasive Plants of Tennessee list that is adopted here. So that hopefully is giving you some things that would not be permitted within the right-of-way. And then it does define plant material standards to be something that is the American standard for nursery stock. So we're adopting those provisions, at least involving here. We're also looking at, I guess, the latest edition of the guide for plant appraisal by the Council of Trees and Landscape Appraisers as well. And that's one of the areas that we have included under 32.313, which I thought was important for y'all to be aware of about public property tree protection. And over in the code sections in here, it actually gives us statutory authority that's in the Tennessee code at this point in time to actually go out and seek damages against folks for negligent or intentional tree cutting that's set out in the Tennessee code. So based upon that authority, we now have the ability to be able to get, I guess, statutory liability and an award of damages that may occur, and the city attorney's office would be involved in that process. So that's in the code. It's never been in there before, which is helpful at this point in time. It provides for reimbursement here through the Risk Management Division and the monies to be deposited in the tree bank. And it actually caps the amount of fees that can be established here in that section. So that's something, and the caps are pretty high here under state law. It's referencing $50,000 per tree and $100,000 per site. So those locations are actually referenced here if there's an intentional cutting of trees. So that's something I thought you ought to know about.
100K per site, but 50 of trees.
Yes.
So you could cut 20 trees and max out quick.
Yep. I mean, if you want to talk about higher numbers, then we need to think about that.
Well, the numbers come from the Tennessee Code annotated, I believe. I'm not sure we can go higher than 50 and 100,000.
I believe the references, at least in there, we were looking at, it's 4328.312 that provides the provisions for that. And we can look and see if there's any ability to go in different numbers.
Okay.
Councilwoman Noel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick and simple. I just want to say the great District 8 is recipient of a lot of trees being planted right now.
They are.
And last year as well. And it's definitely been a good thing. It looks good, and it's definitely good for us.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Chris, I've got a couple of questions on the bonding procedure. Is that something that the city is going to bond, or is this through an insurance agency?
That's for individuals, the public.
Explain that. What do you mean that's for, I thought this was for anybody that was commercial clearing more than an acre.
That's what I mean is by individuals, outside parties, not the city government. I misunderstood your question. The bonding would be required for the buffer trees that are often planted, if I want to put a gas station next to a neighborhood.
So a developer will have to go to an insurance company to get the bond, is what I'm asking, I guess.
Yes,
The city is not going to bond it, so.
we are not.
So that's a step in the permitting process then, when they go to file a permit for, I guess, either land disturbance or the building permit?
I think that would come at the end of the land disturbing permit process, the very end. I don't think it would come before any reviews. And I think it would run concurrently with that. I don't know why I would have to
And I
slow
guess
this
that
one
was
down.
another question, if that was something that was going to be reviewed, because it does seem like we already get complaints about how long the permit process is with all
Yes.
the reviews. And I would hate to add length of time to those reviews because we've added now another layer to our permitting process.
Yes, sir, I share that concern and live it every day. And it's the last thing our administration would want to do is to delay the permitting process. There's no reason this wouldn't happen concurrently with other reviews from places like stormwater.
Okay. But this is something that they would have to bring to the permitting process. I mean, they'd have to go get their bond for the,
Yes, they'd have to submit the document, but it takes 5 minutes to review that. And this actually, this portion is interesting because I shared this with a few members of the development community, engineers mostly, to get their feedback on what's feasible and what's not. And a very well-known engineer who you see at least once a month at this podium, it was his idea to require bonding for the trees. And I did not expect that from a professional from the community, and it was related specifically to Councilman Ledford's district and some trees being installed to meet a permit requirement and then yanked out when we were done inspecting.
okay. All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for that brief presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council.
Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I had a note that I neglected to ask a question on our April 1st proposed agenda. under Public Works, items S and T. Can anyone from Public Works tell me if that is the Summit landfill, when it says landfill, groundwater, samplings monitoring? And if it is,
Councilman, where are you?
I'm on next week's agenda, sir.
Yeah, that's where we're on next week's
S and
agenda.
T. Bill, is that the Summit?
This contract is for both Summit and for Birchwood. There are groundwater monitoring requirements at both of those landfill locations, and so this is for this.
Okay.
Covers both
And
locations.
really, the only
at the very
question
end
there
of the
was, I
resolutions, yeah.
believe Summit is now under District 6. That was my only point.
Yes, it is. At least in my discussions with the attorney's office and with our GIS team, that becomes effective on April 14th after inauguration.
Very good.
Is my understanding.
All right, thank you. That was it,
Yes, sir.
Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we jumped ahead just a little bit. We were still on next week's agenda, but under ordinance's first reading. But we will now go to resolutions. We do have a couple of appointments to various boards in the council office and in the mayor's office. We do have one item under the Office of City Attorney, under resolutions. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. So I would like this item O, I would like some more information on this policy change. The document as it is attached here doesn't give us the full change, and so if you could please send us a red line,
Just need a red line.
yes,
Okay.
of what is changing. And could you go ahead and describe it for us here?
Sure. We last adopted the revised public records policy in 2019. We have looked at what might be needed to include a number of electronic video information that has been included since that time. And we have also reviewed this in connection with the Office of Open Records Council and MTAS's request here for open records policies. So that's the reason we think this is more up to date than what we had before, and includes information as to video that may not have been in there.
Okay, thank you. I'll look forward to the red line.
Okay?
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Moving now into resolutions under Parks and Public Works. Any questions concerning any of those items? And I think, Councilman Ledford, you had a question that has been resolved. All right, moving to this afternoon's purchase items. Council, if you would take a look at those and let me know if you have any questions or concerns about any of our purchase items. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. There is an RFP request this week from Economic Development, and this is coming out of the Affordable Housing Office and needs some further review. So I'm going to be moving to defer this a week.
Okay.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
All right, council, if you look at future considerations, is there anything on our future considerations that needs to be brought to the attention of the council at this time? All right. I am not seeing any lights. We do not have any committee or departmental reports this afternoon. Is there anything else that needs to be brought to the council before we go into recess? Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe we have another birthday
We
on
do?
Ms. Dias,
Uh-oh.
and I'd like to make a request for Vice Chairwoman Hill to sing happy birthday to our city attorney.
So Mr. Nobles has a birthday today.
Yes, sir.
All right, happy birthday.
I'm sorry, y'all.
I sing by myself, happy birthday
Yeah, you are.
to you, Phil, we love you, happy birthday, Mr. Attorney, happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
My
much.
sincerest apologies. Thank you, Councilman.
You're welcome.
Councilman Ledford, I'm not recognizing you for the rest of the evening. All right, I'll tell you what, at this time, we'll go ahead and recess until 4:45, 4:45 this afternoon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will now reconvene our March the 25th council meeting. Moving into our order of business. Madam Clerk, if you will, 7A.
An ordinance to amend ordinance number 14118, also known as the fiscal year 2024-2025 operations budget, be amended for the city of Chattanooga to appropriate the amount $67,546.48 for tax years 2019 and 2023, and for delinquent taxes for tax years 2021 and 2022 in the amount of $203,461.02, following receipt and payment to the city for the Humane Educational Society of Chattanooga, Tennessee, Inc. for property taxes and interest on tax map number 128EA005 back to the Humane Educational Society for a total appropriation after payment of all delinquent taxes and interest is received not to exceed $271,200.
What's the pleasure of the council? All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve with a proper second. Questions or comments before we vote? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Councilman Ledford? Councilman Hester?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dotley? Yes. Councilwoman Knoll?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hill?
Yes.
Chair Henderson?
Yes.
That is 7 yeses.
Motion carries. Now, with no objections from the council, Madam Clerk, would you take 7B through D, please?
Item B, an ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38 zoning ordinance so as to rezone property located at 1907 Stewart Street from RN 15 residential neighborhood zone to IH heavy industrial zone to TRN 3 traditional neighborhood zone. Item C, an ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38 zoning ordinance so as to rezone property located at 2800 Curtis Street from RN 15 residential neighborhood zone to RN 13 residential neighborhood zone. Item D, an ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38 zoning ordinance so as to rezone property located at 2401 East Main Street from CC commercial corridor zone to CTMU traditional mixed use commercial zone.
We have a motion on the floor to approve items 7B through D with a proper second. Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right, Madam Clerk, with no objection again from the council, let's take ordinances under first reading, 8A through C. These are all sewer easement abandonments.
Item A, an ordinance closing and abandoning the unopened right-of-way in the corner of the 2200 block of East 21st Street, 2100 block of South Flowerly, as detailed on the attached map subject to certain conditions. Item B, an ordinance closing and abandoning a sanitary sewer and easement in the 1500 block of Mercer Street, beginning at MH number S 118E041, thence 1439 feet to MH number S 118E115 for a total of 1,439 linear feet. Tax map number 118EE006 as detailed on the attached maps, subject to certain conditions. Item C, an ordinance closing and abandoning a sanitary sewer and easement in the 7500 block of Standard for Gap Road, beginning 20 feet from MH number S 1390-032 to 86.5 feet from MH number S 1390034 for a total of 320 linear feet. Tax map number 1390B005 as detailed on the attached maps, subject to certain conditions.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve items 8A through C with a proper second. Questions or comments before we vote? All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. That motion carries. Now moving into resolutions under council office, Madam Clerk, with no objections, 9A through C.
Item A, a resolution confirming the appointment of Rudolph Foster to the Board of Zoning Appeals for District 5 for a 3-year term beginning on June 9, 2024, and ending on June 8, 2027. Item B, a resolution confirming the appointment of Kanika Jones to the Health, Educational, and Housing Facility Board for District 9 for a term beginning on March 19, 2025, and ending on July 6, 2027. Item C, a resolution to express appreciation for the service of outgoing city council members and to award them their city-issued devices in recognition of their service, establishing this as an ongoing policy for all current and future outgoing members.
What is the pleasure of the council? All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve items 9A through C with a proper second. Questions or comments before we vote? All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. So moved. Moving now into economic development. Madam Clerk, 9D through F, please.
Item D, a resolution authorizing the mayor his designee to enter into a first agreement to exercise the option to renew with the Chattanooga Housing Authority in substantially the form attached for an additional term of 1 year through March 31, 2026 for the use of the Sheila Jennings Wellness Center to operate programs for youth, young adults, and families on the property located at 1201 Poplar Street and further identified as a portion of tax map number 145 FA 002. Item E, a resolution authorizing the interim administrator for the Department of Parks and Outdoors to accept funds from the Bethlehem Center for Empowering Minority Communities Through Swimming Initiative in the amount of $56,640. Item F, a resolution authorizing the administrator for the wastewater department to approve change order number 3 with Reeves Young LLC of Dalton, Georgia for contract numbers W17023-201 and W18008-201. MBWWTP improvements schedules A and B for incorporating CRF number 16 for concrete chipping and the SRMV for an increase of $29,382.58 for a revised contract amount of $10,939,587.21 with a contingency in the amount of $413,450 for a total amount of $11,353,037.21.
All right, do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve items 9D through F with a proper second. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. That motion carries. 9G, Madam Clerk.
A resolution approving a special exceptions permit for a boutique wine and cheese shop located at 50 Fraser Avenue.
Move to approve.
I will have a motion on the floor to approve with a proper second. Questions or comments before we vote? All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed is no. Abstain. Moving now into purchases. Ms. Talley.
I have 4 purchases recommended for approval this evening. The first one is for Parks and Outdoors. This is a 4-year renewal with Weedman Lawn Care, who is requesting a 5% increase due to product, fuel, and labor costs. The new estimated annual spend will be $123,375. Parks and Outdoors has approved this increase. The second one is for Grants. Grants is requesting an increase of $23,400 and an extension through June 30th of 2025 to UHY Advisors Agreement. The new amount will be $148,400. Number 3 is for Fleet. This is a one-time purchase of a milling machine in the amount of $398,310.86. This purchase is utilizing the Sourcewell contract. And number 4 is Parks and Outdoors. This is a one-time purchase of greens maintenance equipment in the amount of $124,870.58. This purchase is utilizing the Sourcewell contract. And then I have one RFP.
All right, let's vote on the purchases first.
Okay.
All right, can I get a motion on the purchases for this evening?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve with a proper second. Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Any opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right.
Okay. I have one RFP format recommendation. It is from Economic Development. They're seeking a consultant to develop and implement a targeted housing outreach strategy.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. I move to defer this item 1 week to April 1st.
Okay. I'll have a motion on the floor to defer until April 1st with a proper second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Any opposed, no. This item will be deferred.
Thank you.
All right, moving now to committee reports. Councilwoman Knoll.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Dotley.
No report.
Councilman Smith.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Ledford.
Farewell tour, Mr. Chairman, April 1st, planning and zoning.
All right, can't wait. Councilman Hester.
Farewell tour, Parks and Public Works.
All right, Madam Vice Chair.
No report.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, I think under other business, we have a certificate of compliance.
Yes, sir. It's for the Cheese Tax LLC, which is a pedestrian wine and cheese location that will be opening at 50 Fraser Avenue, number 250 in Chattanooga. It's in District 2. There are no issues here with the applicants or the location for this business, so it's been recommended to be approved.
Thank you. We come to the time in our agenda that we recognize persons wishing to address the council. If you would like to do so, we ask that you come to the podium at this time, and I will ask the attorney if he will read the rules.
Yes, sir. At the end of each council business meeting, the chair will recognize members of the public who wish to address the council, and here's your rules. Each speaker wishing to address the council can only be recognized at the microphone up front for that purpose, can't have more than 3 minutes to speak, and you can address the council only upon matters within their legislative and judicial, quasi-judicial authority, and not upon matters which are not under their authority or regulated by other governmental bodies or agencies. Please do not engage in any vulgar or obscene language, nor use the floor to personally attack or personally denigrate others, and the speaker should address the council as a whole and not make comments directed towards individual council members. Lastly, do not engage in disorderly conduct or disrupting a public meeting, which is prohibited by Tennessee law, and someone commits that offense if a person substantially obstructs or interferes with the meeting by physical action or verbal utterance with the intent to prevent or disrupt a lawful meeting or gathering. Having stated those rules, please state your name. Go ahead, sir.
Andrew Jones. One, I appreciate the 3 minutes that I get each week to come up here and talk. Really don't prepare too much, more or less have something I want to say and then riff off of it. But at the end of the day, I'm here, I come in peace, regardless of what I've said online, and what I'll continue to say is my truth. But about whether it's things I've said online about Mayor Kelly, I do my best for anyone that watches my podcast on my X account to keep it semi-professional. But at the end of the day, I'm here to talk about leadership. So if you're gonna quote me on what I'm talking about leadership. I put into Grok, for those who don't know, Grok is a machine, think ChatGPT, super smart, super scary. Generally things that are scary are things we don't understand. But I typed in leadership quotes. What did I say exactly? Here's some quotes, or no. What I type in, quotes on leadership and stirring the pot. I'm here to stir the pot, if y'all haven't noticed. I'm here to say it loud. The quotes on leadership and stirring the pot. The function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. Ralph Nader. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. John C. Maxwell. The best way to lead people into the future is to connect with them deeply in the present. And I saw that and I thought, no better quotes to read for what I'd like to riff on. When something happens that doesn't normally happen, I think you can call it an anomaly. And I know I'm an anomaly when it comes to politics. I have a deep breadth of what war looks like, unfortunately. I've deployed 11 times as an Army Ranger. If I would have stayed in the military, I'd be going into my 20th year as we speak. And I find it so alarming when I talk to politicians and they seem concerned, and I'm sure many are, and I know you're busy, but I'm telling you right now, when it comes to moving the ball forward and when you pledge allegiance to this flag here, as much as you dislike the idea of DEI, everything that Trump is putting out there, you gotta stir the pot. And I don't care about Republicans, I don't care about Democrats, I care about Americans. And if you don't realize that our Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, and all the other amendments are being eroded, regardless of who is in office, we have to make government more transparent. And if I am gonna die on a hill, it is to make government more transparent. Because when I go to the world's fastest internet in the world, run by Chattanooga.gov, and I can't look at every dollar being spent or where my tax dollars are going in real time, you're failing.
All right, anybody else that would like to address the council this afternoon? Council, I am not seeing anyone. What is your pleasure? So moved, we're adjourned.